Alrighty, I think we're here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. It is Sunday, the last day of March in 2024. Happy Easter, everybody. It's nice that you're joining me here tonight. And I am glad to be here because I almost didn't make it. This was a crazy weather day on the road. I'm just making sure that everybody is logged on here. Let me know where you're watching from. Watching from, and if you can hear me. And I am here in Boise. I got here less than an hour ago, got checked in, got everything set up so that we could do this live. I had meant to be here several hours ago, but things didn't quite go that way because of the weather, and I'll show you what I mean tonight. We have a lot happening here tonight on Courtroom Insider, but we're going to talk about jury selection. It starts tomorrow morning, and already we have a lot happening here. But as I was driving here to Boise, I live in Idaho Falls, and if you're familiar with the drive, you go down to Pocatello, and then you cut across over to Twin Falls. These are the major cities that you hit. You hit Twin Falls, and then Rupert's in there, and then Mountain Home, and then Boise. It takes about 4 hours from Idaho Falls. When I left, it was raining in Idaho Falls. When I hit Pocatello, it was kind of sleet and slush. The speed limit in that area is around 80 miles an hour, and I was going around 80. And actually, I was probably going a little bit slower because the roads were so slick. And I was outside of like American Falls, headed toward almost Burley, when all of a sudden I hit ice, slush, something, and my car spun. And I ended up circling in the median, and I ended up on the oncoming traffic's lane, and praying the whole time. You know, I've covered these type of stories so many times, and here I was in the middle of it, like praying, please don't get hit. And the first thing I'm thinking of, I have a 6:30 Courtroom Insider to do. So I stopped in the oncoming traffic. Fortunately, there were no cars around, and fortunately, the median was flat. In a lot of those areas, there's like, it dips down, but I was able to quickly pull in the median, took a deep breath. The engine light was on, but the car was still running, and I'm thinking, oh, surely I blew a tire. Something happened. Surely something happened. So I was able to look, and the car was covered in like slush because of all the commotion and dirt. And I look and I pull across the highway that I was coming on, and I get off to the side of the road, and I get out of the car, and this is me. I'm in shorts and flip-flops. And I did have other clothes, but they were packed. So I'm in shorts and flip-flops. It's freezing. I have a jacket on. Luckily, I had my East Idaho News hoodie. You can wear these proudly. I get out. All the tires are fine. I get back in the car. I'm like, whew. I got to call my wife, but I'm going to call her when everything's fine because I don't want to worry her. I get driving on the freeway, and the car is shaking. And I could go maybe 30 miles an hour. And I had some East Idaho News coffee mugs that I brought with me to give to some people, and they were clanking together in the back seat. I got up to 50, and anything past 50 would just shake like crazy. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I was like an hour and a half, 2 hours from home. I then call Erica. I say, honey, I'm okay, but this is what happened. Can you look and see if there's a place in Twin Falls or Burley where I can rent a car? And what I'll do is I'll drop off my car today, and then I'll let them work on it for the week because I got to figure out why it's shaking. And then I'll drive a rental to Boise. Everything's closed in Twin Falls on Sunday to rent a car. The airports, we couldn't find a car. The closest place was like Boise. So I'm like, well, I guess I can drive to Boise going, 30 to 40 to 50 miles an hour in a car that's shaking. Or I can, that's about my option. Well, let me show you then, as I'm driving along, there was, I don't know if you can see on screen left, that there was a white car in the median just right past me, but that was down further. Don't worry, I was stopped when I took this picture. On the right side of the screen, that's a pickup that was pulling a horse trailer, and the pickup was all smashed up and the trailer was dented, and there were 2 or 3 other cars that were off the road. And I'm looking at that thinking, thank goodness I am okay and that my car, yeah, it's shaking, but this could be a lot worse. And right then, someone I know well who is was just in front of me coming over here for the trial message and said, just so you know, from American Falls to Burley, it's a blizzard, lots of slide offs down to one lane, took quite a while to get there, so be careful. I wrote back, dude, I was just one of those. Thank goodness I'm okay and the car's okay, but stuck in bumper to bumper traffic. And I kid you not, after that bumper to bumper traffic, the shaking of my car stopped. Like, I was able to accelerate and the car wasn't shaking. And I was able to get up to 60, 70 as the weather's clearing. I wasn't going that fast in the snow, but eventually 80. And the car is not shaking. Like, it's like nothing happened. So I call a mechanic friend of mine and I'm like, what? Explain this. He said, well, you probably got a bunch of ice and snow up in your tires and wheels when you were, when you went through that, and then it probably just melted or wore off as you were driving and stuck in that bumper to bumper traffic. It could have fallen out. Long story short, I'm fine and the car's fine. And I made it here just to talk to you. And here, I guess the moral of the story, why I'm telling you this, here's your Easter message. This truck was right in front of me after. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. Did you pray today? Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Well, good thing I said my prayers today because I'm okay. All right. That's all. That's the experience of me getting here to Boise. And it was funny because when I got into town, I wanted to swing by the courthouse really quick just to give you a report. This is what it looks like tonight. Not that. This. Not that. Oh, I have a courthouse picture here. There we go. It's sunny. It's like it didn't even snow. Well, I don't know if it snowed here in Boise, but it's like warm and hot. And anyway, it's nice and sunny outside. Already big difference between Chad Daybell's trial and Lori's trial is that when I came the day before jury selection for Lori Vallow's trial, there was media all over those steps. There was media live trucks parked in front of the courthouse. There wasn't one live truck there tonight. Either they're waiting to come, other reporters are waiting to come till after jury selection, or there's just not a lot of interest, or because it's being live streamed, they're not here and they're just going to monitor it. But it'll be interesting to see how the next few days goes if the interest does peak up. And I'm curious, I want to ask you, if you're watching, comment, do you think there's as much interest in this one as Lori's, or less interest, or about the same? We've kind of had the trial. We kind of know a lot of the evidence and a lot of the witnesses, but there will still be some different things happening. So, yeah, curious to know what your thoughts are as far as what we will see in the next few days. So coming up tonight, here's what we're going to talk about. What do things look like at the courthouse? I just showed you. Tonight it's pretty quiet. I'll let you know tomorrow morning. Jury selection begins tomorrow, what we can expect. I have an interview with Tom Evans. He's juror number 18. He's with me tonight. He's going to talk about what it was like to be on that jury and what maybe other potential jurors should look out for. Also, real fascinating, I asked him if he had to choose Lori Vallow's, if she got death or life in prison, what would he choose? And because, think about it, this jury, Chad's jury, they're going to have to decide that. I don't know if in this case the surprise is going to be the verdict in so much. Could be wrong, but that's going to be guilty or not guilty. I think the surprise or the unexpected, we don't know, will be if he's found guilty, if he will get life in prison or the death penalty. That's what we're going to have to wait and see. But I asked Tom, if you had to, if the death penalty was still on the table for Lori Vallow, what would you choose? And I'll play you his answer here in a minute. We're going to remember Tammy, JJ, and Tylee. I'm going to answer as many of your questions as I can tonight. So first, little rumor patrol I have to clear up. Today, I'm sitting at church enjoying the Easter service when I get a message from one of you and then another message from someone else saying, is Chad Daybell's house for sale? Now, John Pryor, Chad Daybell's attorney, owns his house. He got it as part of the deal when he became Chad's attorney. So his name is on the papers, or he at least has a lien on it. This is his house to possibly sell. Well, that would be interesting timing if the night before jury selection, the house goes up for sale. But sure enough, this was the image right outside. That's Chad's house. Notice that sign there. It says, Well, it doesn't say for sale, but it's a realty sign. You know, it's a sign. And actually, I messaged Peggy. She works for us, and she lives nearby. And I said, "Can you go down and see?" And sure enough, this was the photo she checked. Well, we did some further investigation, and that house is not for sale. Chad Daybell's home is not for sale, at least as of tonight, publicly. And that sign is for someone else's house. So if you want to live down the road from the house, it's for sale. It's a really nice neighborhood, and really good people. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about jury selection. I'm going to go through a couple of bullet points here so that you kind of have an idea of what we can expect tomorrow. It's going to start at 8:30. Be sure you're subscribed to the East Idaho News YouTube channel, or that you're watching on Facebook, wherever you're at, so that you can watch every moment of the trial if you want. All you have to do is subscribe and hit the bell. Then you'll get a notification. I'm going to be honest, jury selection is not the most captivating courtroom drama. It's a lot of repeat, a lot of repetition, but there are some interesting things to watch for. For instance, we know that around 2,000 questionnaires were sent to Ada County residents over the past few weeks for this trial. Those questionnaires ask questions like, what are your thoughts on the death penalty? What do you know about the Chad Daybell case? Did you watch Lori Vallow's coverage of that case? Did you watch the Netflix, the Datelines, the 2020s, whatever? Those questionnaires were brought back to the courthouse last week, and they were sorted. And Chad Daybell was in the courtroom. He was there. He was there. His attorneys were there. The prosecutors were there. They went through all these questionnaires. And there were likely, I wasn't there, it was closed off to the media, but there were likely some questionnaires, some people who said, I believe Chad Daybell should die. Or, yes, I followed every second. Or, I watched Courtroom Insider every night. Something like that. If they said that, it's likely they were disqualified. But if some of the questionnaires said, I don't know anything about the case, or I heard a little bit about it, those people will likely be invited back this next week for one-on-one interviews, for questioning with the attorneys. 12 jurors are needed. In Lori Vallow's trial, 6 alternates were also selected. And the alternates, you didn't know if you were an alternate until the trial was done, until the defense rested and the prosecution rested. And they did it at random. The clerk picked out 6 random numbers, and those people were the alternates, and they got to go home. That was that. They sat through that whole trial, and they didn't even get to deliberate. And that's just how it is. Now, I don't know how many alternates Judge Boyce will pick for this one. We will learn that in the morning. He could choose 6 again. That's a good number in case one gets sick, one of the jurors gets in trouble, whatever. You have backups if needed. And I'm sure he did 6 just to be safe, but that's half a jury you'd lose. But either way, the firm number is 12. So during Lori Vallow's trial, groups of 15, around 15, were brought in at a time. The Jim Archibald or Rob Wood would then say, juror number 12, I noticed on your form that you noted you care for your grandkids 3 times a week. Wouldn't this jury, serving on a jury, hinder that? And they could say, yeah, I'm really there's no other alternate arrangements that I can do. And then someone would say, like Jim Archibald, Judge, I move to have this juror dismissed due to hardship or whatever. And most of the time the judge would say, okay. Sometimes he'd say no. And then they would narrow down these groups, and some would advance further. In Vallow's trial, they needed 42. That was the number the judge set. It could be a different number this week, but they needed 42 to be locked in before the defense and prosecutors started striking. So basically what they do is, out of all those groups, they might get 5 here, 6 there, 0 here, 10 there. Once they had 42 that advanced, they'd call them all back in, those 42. And then they went through, and each side got, I don't remember the exact number of peremptory strikes, where basically they just get to say, I don't want that one, I don't want that one, off, 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 and they narrow it down to 18 or whatever the number is. That part went quick. That part happened on a Friday morning, and I think within an hour or two they had the jury picked. So in Vallow's trial, jury selections began Monday, and we had a jury by 10:15 a.m. on Friday. It's quite possible that a week from now, when I'm here chatting with you again, we have a jury. It's also quite possible that a week from now, we're not anywhere near having a jury, because this is a death penalty case. The bar is higher. There'll be a lot more one-on-one, questions, perhaps, or perhaps there won't be. It just depends. We'll kind of get a feel for it tomorrow, I think, once, John Pryor gets to question these jurors and the prosecutors get to. Another huge change, as we know, this will be televised. You can watch it all. You will not see any of the jurors' faces, or we're not going to show those because they're not going to show them. The jury is protected. But I'll be in the courtroom. That we weren't allowed in the courtroom last year. We were in an overflow room watching a video feed. This year, people are allowed in the courtroom. So I'll have a little different vantage point. Those of us in the courtroom will have, where we'll get to actually see, like, the grandma. We'll get to see the man who, has a cast on his leg. I don't know what. We'll get to see this as it's happening, and we'll kind of get to see, all right, John Pryor's looking for that sort of person, or Lindsay Blake, they're looking for that sort of person. So that's how it works. So we'll know the number, or I hope we'll know the number tomorrow, as far as like the 42. And there would be not cheers, but once the number would build, all the reporters, we kind of all watch together, like, we're at 35, we're at 37, we're at 39. So if next week we have 10, yeah, that's not good, at least for the time. Vallow's jury consisted of 8 women and 10 men. So that kind of gives you an idea of who was on that jury, and what it consisted of. And I don't remember how many actually, as far as the demographics of the male female for the finals, for the final selection, who was alternate and who was not, but that's what we have there. So that's kind of how jury selection works. There are other trials I've covered where jury selection's taken 2 hours. This is not that time. They're really going to go in depth, and that is, of course, what is important, because you don't rush Lady Justice. Make it happen. Somebody asked, could Chad Daybell show up tomorrow and plead guilty? Absolutely. He could walk into that courtroom tomorrow and say, I'm going to plea. My wife, Erica, was on a jury several years ago. She got picked. It was a civil jury. They had the jury picked. The defendant walked in, saw the jury, and said, all right, I'm going to plea. It's possible Chad Daybell's trial could go 2 or 3 weeks and they plea. We covered on East Idaho News a year or two ago a jury trial that on day 3, the defendant came in, and overnight they had hashed out a plea agreement with the prosecutor, and it was over. I mean, at this point, don't we all kind of want a trial? I mean, I want to report on a trial. Don't you? Don't you want to see everything? But it would save the victim. It would save a lot of people a lot of heartbreak by just taking a plea agreement. So that is an option. All right, I want to play for you the interview that I did just a couple days ago with Tom Evans. He was on the Vallow jury. He has some interesting insight. And then when we come back, I want to take your questions after that and let you know who's going to be on Courtroom Insider this week. But here's my interview with Tom Evans, juror number 18. Was juror number 18 in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. Tom, as we gear up here for Chad Daybell's trial, flashback to a year ago. What were you doing with your life? Do you remember when you got the jury summons in the mail?
I do. It's all kind of a blur, though.
Right. Tell me about that. So you get called down to the courthouse. Had you done jury duty before?
I'd never done jury duty before. I had no idea what the case was going into it. I just thought it was like business as usual at the courthouse. There were tons of jurors called in, but I didn't know they were all for one trial, or I had no idea what was going on.
And you advanced past the questionnaire phase, and then where they then question you in person. So I believe it was a Friday morning when they picked the actual jury, and they went through and they're like, yes, no, yes, no. What did you think when you found out you had been selected?
I just remember sitting in the courtroom, and I guess there were 18 of us. and we were being questioned. Actually, there were more than that, but it got boiled down to the 18, and I still didn't know that I was actually on the jury. I just thought we were just another group of several groups until we were brought then into the jury room, and they started giving us instructions on, where we were going to get picked up and stuff like that. And I think it was the same for some other people too. Then it just kind of dawned on us that we were actually on this jury. It was shocking.
What did you know about the case beforehand?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I knew who Lori was. I knew that the kids had been missing and found dead, but like I didn't know who Alex was or any of the other players. I think I probably would have recognized Chad or his name. That was about it.
Right. So, what would you describe? I know this is probably a really broad, big question, but how would you describe that 6 weeks there in the Ada County Courthouse every day?
Well, of course, it was really hard. Um, it wasn't a comfortable thing for me. Um, I'm used to being outside, and I'm not, used to hanging out inside a small room with a bunch of people or being in a courthouse or anything like that. So it wasn't really in my comfort zone. Um, and every day was different. There were days, of course, that were horrific. We had to see what we had to see and hear what we had to hear and go through all of that. So that was really hard. Um, yeah, it was just day to day, take it one day at a time, get brought into the courthouse, and something different every day.
Was there a particular piece of evidence or witness or moment that you remember where you thought, okay,
One piece of evidence. Like they found her hair between the plastic and the duct tape on JJ's body. That didn't mean that much to me because it's a mom's hair and it's going to be everywhere. Maybe some other jurors felt different about that. I don't know. But for me, it was just an accumulation of things. And actually, what's weird to say is I think that a lot of the jurors that had been her friends, people in her inner circle, I think had more influence on me in making my decision than all of the police and the FBI and the professional uh, people who testified.
it was the more personal witnesses versus the experts?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I believed all the expert testimony. Those people were solid. They were thorough, and I think it's because I believed them so much that it came down more to, do I believe Zulema or April or any of these other people and what
Right.
they say?
Yeah, I interviewed another juror last year, and he pretty much told me the same thing, that it was those personal witnesses. And I think as humans, maybe we relate more to that, at least on an emotional level. But then if you've got the evidence to back it up, which the prosecutors did, that makes it a little bit more confirming, I guess, when you come down with the verdict.
I wouldn't say that I necessarily related to any of the witnesses that had been her friends, though.
Right, right.
They were a little out there for the most part.
Well, that leads to my next question. There would have had to be moments where you were thinking, what? Do you recall some of those? Like where you're like, what are they even talking about? I mean, as I was in there reporting, having covered that story for 3 years, knowing a lot of the background, there were still moments where I had those, what? So I'm sure as a juror, not knowing much, there were many confusing or perplexing moments.
I felt like I was behind the curve the whole time trying to catch up.
Mm.
And the frustrating part was I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't ask any questions. I couldn't even talk to other jurors about the case during breaks or anything. So I had to just take what they gave me, try to comprehend what that was, and you know, just try to understand it all.
Right. Yeah, that is the thing. You can't clarify anything because you can't ask those questions.
I'm still
So,
trying to do that. I'm still trying to understand a lot of it.
right. With those questions now, are you planning to watch Chad Daybell's trial?
I plan to be there, maybe not every day, but most days I will be at the trial.
at the trial. So are
Yeah.
you hoping to maybe get some of those questions answered, or at least maybe more understanding?
I am. I'm definitely hoping that. I think the prosecution says that there will be more. I don't know if they held back or they just have new information or what, but there's going to be more information come out that hopefully will be like more layers peeled off the onion, getting closer to understanding how it is that this could have happened in the first place.
Right. Well, and one of the big differences is there'll actually be a defense.
Yeah.
And when you were on the jury, were you anxious for the defense to speak? I mean, were you finally like, okay, now we get to hear the other side? And what were your thoughts when they said we don't have one in so many words?
By the time it was got to that point, honestly, I was so relieved that when Jim Archibald stood up and I forget what his exact words were, but basically, we don't have a defense. That was a relief for me. I, I I guess I was kind of looking forward to what they would have had to say and what witnesses they would have called. Um, and I would have maybe liked to see a little bit more cross-examining of some of the witnesses, maybe some more fireworks. But I don't think there was any of that to be had. I don't think they had anything they could have done or said or any witnesses they could have called that would have helped her case at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have been a different trial if Lori had allowed them to do their job, you know,
Right. Yeah.
but she didn't. And by all accounts, Chad Daybell will allow John Pryor to do that. And he has said that there'll be expert witnesses and whatnot. So that'll be, I would imagine that will be kind of fascinating for you to be in the courtroom, but on the other side, in the gallery where all of us were sitting as a spectator.
Oh, yeah. And I'll get to talk to you guys during breaks, and I don't have to, sit in the jury room and not talk about the case.
Right.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to that.
What was the hardest part of being a juror in such a long, uh, devastating case?
Um, so it's been a year, right? And I'm just now kind of looking back on that and thinking about it and realizing that I think it took more of an emotional toll on me than I realized at the time. People who know me, who are close to me, they tell me now, and they told me then, but I didn't really understand it then. But they tell me I wasn't the same. I haven't been the same, and I'm just starting to get back to myself,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I mean, I didn't realize that, and for it to take a year to, I'm sure you've experienced a lot of that yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It does. And um, I remember my first day back at work here in Idaho Falls. I mean, you guys had your verdict Friday. Thank you for that, by the way, not carrying it over the weekend. And I came home Saturday. Sunday was Mother's Day. And I was sitting at my desk Monday morning and I just thought, what am I going to do now? I mean, because
Right?
you're so intense for that, 2-month period.
Yeah.
Um, did did your wife, did your family, did your friends, were they following the trial as you were on the jury?
My wife for sure, and yeah, a lot of my friends too. But my wife every day was paying attention to what was going on, and we couldn't talk about it when I got home. But she was always there for me, and we would go on a hike or try to do something to kind of take my mind off of it. She was great.
What do you think for this trial? What would be your, I don't know if I want to say advice or suggestions. What would you say to the prosecutors as far as, having been in that one of those 12 seats, well, 18 seats is with the alternates. Uh, what do they need to do to effectively make their case?
So they asked me the same question. I got the opportunity to interview them after the sentencing, preparing for my book, and they asked me that too. And I don't know what else they could do. It's it's such a convoluted case. If anything, I think maybe outline the case a little more clearly. But when I look back on the transcripts of the case, I see that they did that. And somehow I just wasn't able to really keep up with it in real time. So maybe slow that down just a little bit and make it a little bit more clear to the jurors what their case is going in.
Yeah. Again, I thought the same thing for you all as because I was familiar with the story as I'm reporting it, and they're bringing in all these names and locations, and especially on the days of the GPS pings and all that, when it can get pretty
Oh
technical.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and some of those warm afternoons, I felt for you there in the jury box. What about the defense? Would you say anything to the defense?
Oh, listening to some of the pretrial hearings, if I had some advice to give the defense, it would be maybe don't talk on so long and try to make points that people already get to Mr. Pryor. That's I don't know, that would be the only thing I have to say to him.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any interesting behind the scenes little nuggets or things that you can share with us?
Um, I've been working on my book. The first book about the Lori Daybell trial is done. It's in editing right now with my publisher.
Yeah, tell everybody the name of the book.
Yep, it's Money, Power, and Sex: The Lori Vallow Daybell Trial by Juror number 18.
And we'll show a graphic here. This was done by Lisa Cheney, the graphic artist
Yeah,
that the media we hired to do sketches because there were not cameras in. Which this case we won't need sketch artists because there are cameras. What made you decide to write a book, Tom?
by the time the trial was over, there were two things that just were really struck me. One was that I wanted to try to get something good out of the trial. I wanted to try to do something, can't make up for all the things that happened, but try to do something that's positive. So I thought, I'm not an author, but there's a story to tell here. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to donate the profits to some charity, which I can talk about that later. But I didn't have a charity picked out at the time, but I thought it's got to be something that helps children. And then the other thing was when I went into this trial, it started out being so dark for me and depressing and sad and all negative. But by the time it was over, I actually was honored to do my service as a juror, and I was proud of the judicial system and the police, the FBI, how everybody had worked together, the prosecution, and I really felt like I needed to tell that story. After all the news that we've been watching over this last 4 or 5 years, defunding the police and all the negative things that have happened in our country that we've seen, this turned out to be something positive for me.
Well, that's an interesting take because, there are some jurors that say, I never want to do it again. And they're not sitting through murder cases involving children. Um, so that it's nice that you were able to find the positive aspects and then write this book. And now you have found a charity to donate your proceeds to.
Yes, it's called Hope House. It's out in Marsing, and they take kids in from all over the world. Any child that's in need and danger, they'll take them in and provide a home. And it's really great. It's a Christian organization, but it's not affiliated with any particular church. They don't have strings attached with the federal government, so they aren't guided by those kind of things,
Mhm.
and they just do really good work there. We got to go out and tour it and meet the directors and take a look at it. And as far as I can tell, everything is really positive. The other charities that we looked into several of them. They all had some kind of defect that kept us from wanting to give them money.
Mm. Okay, so people are going to want to know when the book comes out.
It can't come out until the Chad Daybell trial is over. So it's ready to be released, or it will be, um, as soon as as soon as there's a verdict is in, it's going to be released. So, end of May, sometime in June, whenever
Okay.
that is.
All right, so there's your summer read. It'll be ready for the summer. Tom, what would you say overall about has this changed your opinion of like true crime type of shows? Were you into those? Were you into documentaries, podcasts before this? And has it changed?
I never really was that into it. I mean, I always liked to read like Anne Rule books or whatever, some true crime stuff. but I never got into it like all the stuff that's on TV nowadays. I'm still really not. If it doesn't have to do with this case, I'm not interested. I watch you, I watch Lauren Matthias, all, but when it's has to do with a different case, no interest. And maybe that's because I'm so deep into our case that I don't really want to get distracted by something else.
Hmm.
Not sure.
Right. So you did you go back after the trial and like actually the day the verdict came down, there was a Dateline that night. Did you watch it?
I don't remember if I watched it that night, but yeah, I've watched everything that I can find about the
So
trial
you
stuff.
went back and watched the Netflix show, all of them.
Yeah, all the stuff that I hadn't seen and didn't get to watch before.
Oh,
And then I started to get a little bit of understanding of everything that I was told.
started to make sense. You had the quick learn as much as you can version, whereas most of us have had 3 or 4 years to kind of put it together. But
Right.
even then, I still, I'm stunned at what I forget or what I remember. And
Yeah,
obviously there'll be a lot more here in the next, 8 weeks or so.
there's
Are
so much.
you relieved that Lori's trial was not a death penalty case? Would that have changed, your mind being a juror?
It's really strange to think about that. And toward the end of the trial, when there was just downtime, I remember sitting there contemplating that. I don't know why I was, because we were not confronted with that. But it would have been a big deal. I'm pretty. I if somebody does the things that they did, they deserve to die, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm all for the death penalty in that way. But still, it would have been tough. I would have had a hard time dealing with that, and when I'm actually confronted with that, it changes my thinking on the death penalty a little bit, and I'm really concerned about the jurors in the Chad Daybell trial.
Hmm. But
Having
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, having gone through what I went through, uh, I know a little bit about how much of an effect it's gonna have on them, and they're gonna be faced with the death penalty, and I think that's gonna be a whole different level for them.
Right. But you would have had no issue. Maybe let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. You would have had no issue putting Lori Vallow to death?
Exactly, I would have had no issue, I would have done it, but I think it would have cost me something.
Mm.
Yeah,
But based on the evidence and everything you saw, you would have been fine with it.
no problem. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
absolutely been able to do it.
And I know some have said that perhaps that would be a harder decision versus the guilty, not guilty decision.
It would be, yeah, because it goes back to the jury in a death penalty case. They have to sentence, not the judge, the jury actually has to sentence um, the defendant to death. And I think that would just be a really hard thing to do.
Right. What would you say to people watching that are, just getting into this new trial? Maybe they just found out about the case, or maybe they watched the Lori Vallow case. What should we be watching for? Or better yet, what are you going to be watching for?
I'm just going to be watching for new information that we didn't get. Because now that I've done all the research and I don't know as much as somebody like you or some of the other people who've been following this case the whole time, but I know as much as I could possibly soak in the years since the trials ended. Um, and I know there's more. I have unanswered questions. There's so much more. The main question being, how does somebody like Chad and Lori, how did they get to a point where they're able to do the things that they did? Why is pretty easy. How is a little harder to understand. So that's
Yeah.
what I've contemplated a lot. That's what I write about a lot. And hopefully we're getting some answers. But I think we have a little ways to go. And hopefully the Chad trial will help with that.
Right. Right. Hopefully it'll help. Maybe it'll make it even more frustrating that there isn't that answer, because
Yeah, right.
still the human mind, I think we want to understand. We want to at least have some sort of reasoning as to the why. And I guess
Yeah,
the prosecutor said it with Lori, money, sex, power, but still
right.
there's the deeper why.
And the interesting thing to me is, so they said it was Lori. Now they're going to say it was Chad. You say one thing to one juror, then you say jury, and then you say something different to another jury that contradicts what you said to the other jury. But it's not really that way. After thinking it all out, they're not contradicting when they say that because Chad was the religious guru leader, and that kind of makes him, even though it's hard to explain, but even though Lori was responsible for the murder of her children, Chad is kind of responsible for Lori and having it go through her and then down through Alex and the actual murder. So
Right. Yeah, that'll be an interesting point. It will be interesting to see the different tactics the prosecutors use in this case versus, Chad's. Will they do a lot of the same stuff? As you said, there is more we don't know. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of what's on Chad Daybell's hard drives. We saw Lori's, and again, it's a whole new game with the defense. This is a different attorney. This is different. Granted, he did get a sneak preview. John Pryor did of the trial because he was at Lori's almost every day. Um, but yeah, it'll be a whole new mix, and it'll be interesting to see as jury selection continues through the weeks. Who ends up making that jury.
right, I wonder how long it's going to take them.
Yeah,
Might take a little longer this time around.
I imagine so, especially once you get into the death penalty type questions. People's views on that. Tom, is there anything you want to add? Anything I didn't ask you that you want to touch on?
Oh, I don't know. It's just been an interesting year. I feel like I'm finally coming back to myself. It's amazing to me that it takes that long for that to happen, but things are good. I'm working on the second book. I'm pretty well into that, but I can't. I have a ways to go because the trial needs to happen before I can write about it. So
Yeah. I did want to ask you, Tom. With the graphic images and the evidence and everything, were counseling services offered to jurors at the end of the trial?
they were. The court offered to pay for counseling. You would have to go out and find your own counseling, and the court would pay for that. And I know that some jurors are doing that. I did not. Maybe I should have looking back, but I don't think I need to now at this point. But I think it's been therapy for me just doing all the research I've done, getting to know a lot of the people involved in the case, and writing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody handles and deals with grief and trauma differently. We know that.
Yeah,
But being on a jury, being in that courtroom every day for 6 weeks is a trauma when you're seeing the stuff you see. And you mentioned that you didn't expect it to affect you that way, as I did not either. I mean, it just, affects you differently as a reporter as you're covering it. So that's good
well,
that those services are provided.
yeah, and I think about people like you, and I think about the police who had to do all this firsthand. And I'm so much further removed than a lot of people are. A lot of people had to deal with it a lot more closely than I did, and I'm worried about those people too.
Yeah, I'll never forget that the day after the children's bodies were discovered, I was driving around the property. It was still closed off to the public, so we couldn't get close. But through the long view from where we were, you could see, and I heard accounts of officers sifting through dirt to
Yeah,
find any sort of human remain in the hot summer sun. I mean, it's just they're out there on their hands and knees in the dirt. So yeah, imagine the effect on those guys.
I yeah, after the sentencing, I went to the sentencing in Rexburg, and when it was actually on my way down there, I was driving by myself. Um, my wife had planned to come with me, but I ended up going on my own because our grandson was due to be born that night. So she stayed at home. And anyway, so I made that long drive by myself, contemplating the whole thing. And on the way into Rexburg, I decided I need to go drive by Chad Daybell's house. So I went out there. I pulled over in the little turnout there and sat there by myself for maybe half an hour, just looking over and thinking about what everybody had to go through that day. And it was just kind of somber and sad. And then I went back to the hotel, ran into two of my fellow jurors who were there for the sentencing too, and they wanted to go back out. So I thought, well, I don't really want to go back out there, but I'll go back out there with them. So we went out there, and this time the little turnout that I pulled out and sat there by myself earlier was full of people. You may have been there, I don't remember, but the media was out there. They're interviewing Kay and Larry, who I had talked to on the phone but hadn't met yet. So we got out and we stood there and waited for things to wind down a little bit. And then Larry approached us and thanked us and hugged us. And it just, it was just striking to me how, you know, a couple hours earlier, I was out there by myself feeling sad. And then the next time I go out there, you know, it was so warm and caring.
Right.
So that's just kind of a little bit of a synopsis or whatever about how it kind of turned things around for me.
Yeah, I've heard that from so many people associated to the case, even with the case, even the police, saying that it's the most horrific thing you'll ever cover. But there's also really positive, good friendships that have been formed and relationships and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, well, thank you for your service, for serving on the jury, and to all of your other jurors. And
my honor.
um, I look forward to reading your book and look forward to seeing you here at the trial most days. And awesome. Anything else you want to say, Tom?
I think that's about it. Thank you for interviewing me. And
All right. Thank you to Tom for chatting with me. Interesting perspective there. Having been on the jury, I remember seeing Tom. Having been on the jury, I remember seeing Tom in the courtroom when he would walk in, and every day, him and all the other jurors. I have spoken with other jurors off the record, and some of them say we will never talk publicly about it. It was too much about Lori's case and the evidence. Others are more open to talking about it, but Tom, of course, is willing to talk about it. He's written the book, and he's going to be at the trial. So interesting perspective from him. We have a great week coming up here on Courtroom Insider. I can't wait till you see these interviews. Tomorrow, we have John Thomas. He is a death penalty attorney, but he also was Lori Vallow's attorney. Remember him? He did a lot of the questioning of the witnesses. He will be here, and we're going in depth on the death penalty, what it means to be death penalty qualified, what jurors are tasked with, what they're charged with when determining whether the person gets death or life. And he talks a little bit about Vallow, a little bit about that case as well. Then on Tuesday, the one, the only, Keith Morrison is here. He is the kindest guy, and he has a lot of interesting insight on this case. We've been working together for over 4 years now, and when I sent him a message like, hey, Keith, do you want to come on and talk about this? I know you're probably tired of it. You don't have to. Keith's working on like 90 stories at once. He's like, no, let's do it tomorrow. Let's do it. So we Zoomed, and he'll be here. And then on Wednesday, we have Nancy Grace. She has some interesting perspectives too. And I know some of you don't like her. I know some of you love her. I'm all about letting people share their opinions, whether I agree with them or not. And that's, she'll be here talking about this case. And of course, she always has interesting things to say. And then Thursday, Vinny from Court TV, he's got a lot of interesting stuff to say about the case. He's also covered it since day one. I remember that, like, really early on, he invited me on his show to talk about it, and he's been fascinated with it too. So I hope you'll tune in. It's going to be every night this week, 6:30, and we'll take your questions, and we'll talk, and we'll give me something to do every night after the end of the day. If you're new to Courtroom Insider, thanks for joining us. And I made it a point during Lori Vallow's trial. I'm going to make it a point during Chad's trial too, to remember the victims, the people who were really affected. So many people were affected by this, but of course, nobody more than Tammy Daybell, J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Charles in Arizona. And so every night, I'm going to show you a photo or two and talk a little bit about one of the victims or all of them. Just those people who were killed. So tonight, this is Tammy. Tammy Daybell, her husband, who she married many, many years ago, is on trial, accused of killing her. Tammy loved animals. She loved ducks. There's the mama duck on her gravestone with 5 little ducks behind her. Tamara Michelle Douglas Daybell, born May 4th, 1970, died October 19th, 2019. Tammy was a beloved wife and mother, devoted daughter and sister, and a friend to all animals. No mention of Chad on that gravestone. But that is Tammy. Now, I was thinking about, what am I going to say about Tammy? I want to pay tribute tonight for a little bit to Tammy's mother, who passed away right after the verdict came down. Not right after, within weeks of Lori Vallow being found guilty. I had a chance to meet her, Phyllis, and she was wonderful. In fact, when this story broke in early 2020, I, like many other reporters, reached out to all the extended families and said, hey, can I interview you? Can I meet with you? Can I talk to you on or off the record? I'm just trying to put this together. And many of them didn't respond. Many of them were scared to talk to reporters. Many of them didn't know what was happening. Most of us didn't really. And I reached out to Tammy's sister, Samantha Gwillem, and her husband, Jason. And it was in January, and right before I went to Hawaii. And about 6 or 7 months later, they finally said, okay, you can come and meet us, but it's all off the record. So I'm not going to talk about what we discussed that night because it was off the record. But they did give me permission to share these photos last year when we talked about it. But while we were there talking with Jason and Samantha, Phyllis and Ron came over. And Phyllis is, of course, Tammy's mom. This photo on the left was from our first meeting. There's Tammy's brother on the right. There's Ron next to him, Phyllis, me, Samantha, and Jason. And I stayed there, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 hours. I brought them some cookies, but they already had cookies and desserts for me. And it was the nicest time. I mean, you just felt at home there. Just such good people. And I remember Phyllis would start to talk about Tammy, and she would go from laughing, recalling a story, to sobbing because she missed her daughter so much. And you can tell, I mean, she was still grieving so much. And then a couple of months later, I went back to visit with them, and that's the photo on the right. And Phyllis's health was declining. And during the trial, it became quite hard for her. They didn't come to the trial at all because of their health, Ron and Phyllis's health. And she was hospitalized toward the end of the trial. And I want to see actually the date that she died, because it was, I mean, Lori Vallow was found guilty the Friday before Mother's Day. And so Phyllis died on June 8th, last June 8th, and Lori Vallow was found guilty on May 12th. So, was found guilty on May 12th. So less than a month later, she passed away. And I don't know, she made it through the trial, made it for the guilty, and then died a few weeks later. She won't be here for her former son-in-law's trial. And her family says she'll be with Tammy. That's more important. But I did love a line from her obituary that I wanted to share tonight. Phyllis was renowned for her open-door policy. Anyone who crossed that threshold was greeted warmly and encouraged to help themselves to snacks from the pantry and candy drawer. Throughout the years, family and friends found solace in her hospitality, always welcome to stay for a night or more. And I can just tell that by having met her, that she was that type of person. And so tonight we remember her. We remember Phyllis and Tammy. And we think about Ron, who will be watching this trial too, and all of Tammy's family, along with JJ and Tylee's family. And we'll, share more memories of them as the time goes on here in the next few weeks. Okay, let me get to your questions. There's so many, but first we're gonna try something new today. I want to do some shout outs. Peggy, our moderator, has randomly gone through Facebook and our YouTube viewership to pull random names. I want to give you a quick shout out. Shannon Shepard, thanks for watching. TM Hammer, Beverly La Rosa, Ann Porter, Peggy Larson, Diane Stewart, Constant Dominguez, Kathy Wallace, Angie Reeves, Nicole Novak, Bruce and Sandy Swanson, Lynn Sessler from Australia. Hi, Lynn. Susan Stallings from Ireland. Good to see you. Laura Reese, Diane Whitehead Stewart. So thanks for watching. Okay, now we will get to your questions. Oh my gosh, there's a lot. Deborah, do you think the Daybell kids will be called to testify? What about Colby? It's possible the Daybell kids could be called to testify. I had heard that one of them was on the witness list for Lori's trial, but never took the stand. It's likely that they've all been subpoenaed. If Chad is found guilty, I'm almost positive that John Pryor will call his children to the stand to plead for life in prison for their dad rather than the death penalty. I'm sure they've all been subpoenaed, meaning they're not supposed to watch any of the trial or read any of the coverage, and they could get a call saying, we need you in Boise tomorrow to testify. So yeah, it's very much a possibility. As far as Colby testifying, I don't know if Colby had any direct interactions with Chad ever, but it's a possibility. Same thing. Someone also asked how he's doing. Last I heard, he's doing well. I don't know much more about Colby though, and I wouldn't want to speculate. If we cannot listen or watch the trial because of work, can we watch it on East Idaho News in the evenings? Yes, you can. Everything that goes on our YouTube channel, which is where the trial will be streamed, you can watch any time. So once it's started, it will post it there forever. So if you want to go and you want to, check it out, or you want to go rewatch some stuff you heard during the day, just go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, and you're there. Pearl, why isn't Chad facing charges in Arizona? Good question, Pearl. Lori is for the death of Charles and the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, her former nephew-in-law. The attorney down there said that they didn't feel that they had enough strong evidence that a jury would convict him. I'm sure they had some pieces here and there, but just not enough to get that conviction. But they do for Lori. Alex, how long does jury selection take? Hopefully I answered that for you, Alex. It could take a week. It could take 2 weeks. It could take 3 weeks. Who knows? Is the jury selection televised? Yes, it will be. We'll be having that. You just won't see what the jurors say. Peggy, can I buy one of your t-shirts or sweatshirts, hoodies? These? Yes, we have these for sale at eastidahonews.com. You can go on and check it out. There's a little button that says shop. We have some other shirts too. That and all those proceeds go to help our newsroom. I know they pick a jury after they start a trial, but when does the actual trial start up? Good question. So they'll pick the jury first, Danielle. Once the jury is picked, the trial could start right away. Most likely, the judge they'll pick the jury. Like with Lori's, it took 5 days. They had a jury picked at 10 o'clock on Friday. The judge said, all right, we're going to dismiss for the day. We'll be back Monday morning. That gave the prosecutors and the defense time to prep their opening statements, put final touches on it, and then the trial started right away. If they finalize a jury on Tuesday morning or Tuesday night, it could be the next day. Sometimes there might be a day in between. It just all depends. And the jury selection could take a week to 14 days. Glenn, what's the status of Lori's case? We haven't heard much of anything for a while. I'm assuming you mean the status in Arizona. We're just waiting. She has another hearing coming up, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks. And it's the same thing there that it was here, where they said, we just have so much evidence, we need more time, Judge. And they're going to have to go through terabytes of information like they did here. They're going to have to put together that case. I don't think that we will have a trial there this year. I think it's going to be next year. Are Lori and Chad able to communicate via mail? If not, can they send something to a third party to send each other? They could, Jody. The Judge Boyce the prosecutors asked for clarification a couple of months ago on whether Chad and Lori were able to communicate with each other. And the judge did say, Judge Boyce said, I did not put any restrictions on communication. So they could. But I would be confident in saying they have not communicated. Can the jury be told in opening statements that Lori was a co-conspirator and what her sentence is? Seems like they should know. That's a good question, Jay. I would imagine they could, but that case shouldn't affect this case. Chad is on trial here, so they have to prove everything on Chad. Lori really doesn't matter. We heard a lot about Chad in her case, but not real blame to him. You could read through the lines and everything, but I'll find out if I would imagine that could be mentioned. I mean, the judge will mention that there was another case and likely what the verdict was, I would imagine, or the jurors are going to sit there wondering for 8-9 weeks what happened with that case. How long is the jury questionnaire? Are there different selection levels? Amy, the questionnaire is sealed. I have no idea, but it is somewhat lengthy from what I said. different selection levels. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Maybe I answered that earlier. Penny says, I hope Lori's sister is doing okay. Her testimony was so heart-wrenching. Do you speak with her? How is she holding up? Summer's doing okay. She is, I'm unsure if she's been subpoenaed for this trial, but she could be, and she could be called to testify again. But I think she's doing okay. You know, this has ripped their whole family up as it would with any of us. Will this trial be a big repeat of Lori's trial, or do you think new evidence will be put on? This is Tiffany. It will be somewhat of a repeat, but there'll be new stuff too, from what I've told. And again, it's a different, Lindsay Blake is leading this one. Rob Wood led the last one. I mean, they're working together. It's a different attorney on Chad's side. It will be a different trial. So I wouldn't say it's a repeat, but a lot of the witnesses will testify to the same stuff, and the evidence will be the same too. And there'll also be new stuff. Why is Chad even going to trial? Do you think he actually has a chance to get off the hook? Good question, Terry. You know, I don't know. I don't know why. You might think that he would look at Lori's, or maybe he genuinely thinks that he will get off the hook and that he's safe, that he's fine. Where can we watch the trial? Let me show you that. I have a button over here somewhere. I think so. There we go. Here, let me pull that up for you. The trial of Chad Daybell. Watch live, 8:30 a.m. on YouTube, Facebook, basically wherever you are watching this tonight, you can watch on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Starts at 8:15. We'll carry it all day long. If you can't watch it, I'll do live updates on eastidahonews.com every 2 or 3 minutes. And then every night I'll recap it here for you, and you can go check out our video library if you would like. And we'll have that for you. All right, so my family is watching at home, and they asked that I tug on their ear to let them know that I love them. You might know a celebrity who has done that, and it was possible that my daughter might be talking with her soon. Real quick, too, Emmy, this I got to show you, getting personal in here. This is a few years ago when I was on television. I don't know if it's going to focus. There we go. That was Emmy and me when I was on the screen doing a live shot, and we took that picture. It was like one of the first times she saw me on TV. So then tonight she went and redid the moment. So they're watching. There they are. Love you guys. Miss you guys. Glad I'm here safe after the treacherous of the road. Here's where you can keep in touch with me. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram. That's more personal type family stuff. I'm also on X, Nate News Now. I'll be doing updates. And then there's our East Idaho News YouTube channel that you can stay up to date on. And of course, we will keep you posted as often as we can for the next few weeks. Again, there's your information. We'll be back tomorrow night with John Thomas with a recap of everything that happens in court tomorrow, with everything that you want to know, and also send in your questions. Don't be afraid to do that. Thank you so much for watching. Again, have a great Easter.